So I'm going to ask a question. What do you think is the difference between mindfulness, meditation, and prayer? Now, that question alone has a weighting of theological conundrums. But what I'd like to try and do today is I'd like to talk about prayer without talking about God. And I'd also like to try and talk about church without talking about religion. Wish me luck. Now, before I lose you all, or most of you, that is the foundation of much of what I enjoy about the motorbike. It's very personal, it's very individualistic, but I think it also helps me to understand why I prefer solo rides to group rides. Now, there's nothing wrong with group rides. There are people out there who love group rides. And there's nothing wrong with solo rides. There are people out there who love solo rides. And what I want to try and do today is explain why I love solo riding and how I find solitude on a motorcycle when I go out to ride. Some people see it as loneliness, but I see it as solitude. So if that's a bit too deep for you, don't worry, it's a motorcyclist's view of the world, not a motorcycle channel. But if you're interested and want to find out more, then stick around with me, musician on a motorbike. Yes, it's something I was thinking about doing or talking about. And while such a subject possibly warrants a bit more due diligence in terms of me sitting down, scripting, reviewing, rewriting, I've decided I'm just going to shoot from the hip while I'm out for a ride today. And the reason for that is it might be more authentic than if I'd spent too much time thinking about it and writing it. But I personally find the motorcycle an incredible place for prayer. Now, before we get into too much, I did say that I wouldn't talk about God and I wouldn't talk about religion. Obviously, I'll be very close to those subjects. But let me just explain what I mean by a place of prayer. You see, when I pray, it's different from what some people might assume. There are prayers of supplication, of course, which is when you ask for stuff. Can you, God, do this, do that, do the other, get this sorted? Which I'm hopeful for, but a bit sceptical of. Now, there's a really deep debate in all of that. That would need a different discussion, which I'm not having today. But really, fundamentally, when I pray, it's more about seeing things with clarity so I can better understand how can I help myself, what's my role in this, and how can I help those around me, and what's my role with them. Now, some people might say, well, that's a bit like meditation. You spend time quietly reflecting and you think deeply about a subject. Now, some people might say, well, the difference in prayer is it is about God, and you do talk about things theologically related, but I think they are much closer linked than we perhaps give them credit for. There are extremists. There are those totally devout extremist religious types that think that anybody who doesn't believe in a religion is wrong. And there are those who are completely atheist who think that There is absolutely nothing, and anybody who believes in religion is wrong. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm obviously on the slightly believing side of where we are, but I don't know. You know, it's called a faith, not a knowledge. And a faith is something you choose to believe based on what you've seen rather than something you know. I know that tree stood there, I've got evidence of it, I can see it. But I spent time on a jury once, and it was a horrible case. There were 14 counts of a crime that we had to evaluate as a jury. We listened to significant evidence, and not once did we ever actually have any first-hand account of what had happened. So what we did is we put our faith in the evidence and we discussed it and debated it, and it took us a few times before we came to a conclusion. But then we took the evidence that we'd been presented with, we put faith in it, and therefore we were able to offer our verdict. And that's kind of a bit like faith to me. It's not something you know, it's something that you believe in and choose to believe in. Now, the reason I use that as a kind of a metaphor is I have got a busy mind, a very busy mind, like many of us. And the trouble with busy minds is they play lots of videos in your head, and some of those videos can be light-hearted and entertaining, and some of those videos can be very difficult. You kind of can imagine what somebody might have said or what they could be saying, or you perhaps reflect on a situation that's passed and you don't see it for what it is, you see it what you imagine it to be. But it can either make the world a much rosier place or a much more difficult place. But for me, when I allow myself and discipline myself to still my mind, it takes a bit more energy than maybe others. I'm saying others, I'm sure many of you are like this, and perhaps this is why it might relate to you. Sometimes when I read a book, there's a story on the page unfolding, and my mind slowly calms down, calmer and calmer, to the point that I'm just enjoying the story. And it's like there's other parts of my brain that are able to completely open up and actually relax and rest. When I'm on a motorbike, I just enjoy the calmness. I've got to focus on the road. There's a cyclist ahead. I don't know what's around the corner. I didn't make anything of it, but just now when I turned into this road, and also when I just before that bridge, there's huge piles of gravel in the road. It took every ounce of me to just stop the bike from slipping. So, you know, little things like that, they take concentration, but I'm not being distracted by news, by opinions, by voices, by people, by things that are just quite frankly not very healthy. So when I actually get on the bike and go out, it's like reading a good book. It just stills the mind. And when I'm here, I prefer the term prayer, but you can call it what you like. It could be mindfulness, it could be meditation. But it's an opportunity to just still the mind a little, calm it down, so you can spend more time focusing on what matters rather than just letting the distractions of scrolling on your phone or the news or just thoughts that are not healthy in your mind. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about solo rides and group rides, but I want to keep on the theme of prayer. I talked about talking about church without talking about religion, so bear with me, let me do that for a moment. Let me just turn out this junction, focus on one thing at a time. There we go. So I've spent a lot of time attending parish churches. I've talked about that in a previous video. But my favourite place to go, places I should say, plural, are cathedrals. Now the beauty of a cathedral is they are just stunning pieces of architecture. I never forget visiting St Paul's Cathedral when I was a child and just being in utter awe at the height of the dome and the ceiling. Even without any appreciation for architecture or what it all means, I just absolutely was just in awe of the whole place. It was moving. And then there's the art. Then you can climb the stairs and look outside and see amazing views of London. As an adult, I remember travelling down to Truro Cathedral, and as I sat there, it kind of dawned on me for the first time that we didn't have JCB diggers or big cranes or modern computers to calculate. This was just people working with their hands and their brains and using pretty advanced mathematics and calculations to understand what would or wouldn't work. Now, in the early building of cathedrals, I've since learned there were mistakes made. The walls were a bit too high, but they learned about buttresses that build up to the side. That's those things that you see brick built like arches on the side outside of cathedrals that help hold the wall up. So when I'm at a cathedral, they are just amazing pieces of architecture. And they're often full of art, beautiful art. But sometimes when I'm recharging, I just enjoy the stillness and the calmness of wherever that allows me to find it. Now, if we look at, just compare that, cathedrals to me is a bit like riding on a bike. I get to admire all this beautiful art, the architecture of man and nature working together to build some of the most incredible views. And I say that as I'm going down a street, but some of my rides, you've seen them, are just these glorious views as you look over the countryside. Just absolutely stunning. And that's what I love about a bike. It's just me, I'm being quiet. At the moment I'm talking to you, but if I am, and I'm just able to think, how can I help myself? What's my role in what's going on around me? And how can I help there? That's my form of prayer. Now, on the flip side of that, you have group rides where you've got other bikers and you've got somebody behind you that you want to make sure they don't drop back, and then watching somebody behind them, and so on and so forth. And then you're watching the person in front of you, and then if one of you drops or stops, you have to slow down. If there's traffic lights, it makes it difficult. Sometimes you get stopped by people that you don't really want to stop because it's not safe, but you feel you don't want to lose anyone, and it just gets a bit busy for me personally. And on the bike, I just love the freedom of seeing a road ahead of me, road behind me, and just enjoying that space and that peace. So whether you're a prayer, whether you're a meditator, or whether you're trying to build a habit of mindfulness, honestly, the motorcycle is one of the best places that you can actually find to fulfill that desire. Well, there you go. Something a little deeper, something a little reflective. I know there's a lot of psychology around people who like to ride alone, and there's people who like to ride in groups, but that's my reflection. The bike is a place of prayer for me, a place of meditation, quiet reflection, and I much enjoy more being on my own. It doesn't mean I don't go out with groups, as you know, and it doesn't mean I don't sometimes enjoy them, but I just have a bias. But there are those who love riding with groups. My only ask is that whether you've got the mentality of a group rider or whether you've got the mentality of a lone rider, just be mindful that we're not all the same. And some people who don't want to join you in your group don't think that's anything against you, it's just where that person is. And equally, if you're someone who likes to ride alone, just show a bit of understanding that some people like to ride together. And my honest advice in that, well, I say honest, it's not dishonest advice, it's just my advice and my thoughts, is that sometimes, and this is what I've begun to learn to do, is if people are meeting at a destination, I meet with them because I love the mixing and all of that. The service in the cathedral is a bit like me riding my bike. I just do my own ride, do my own route and see them there. When I get there, I'm not someone who always chats with a big group. I like the one-to-one conversations, catching up with people, getting to know them. And I love that, but I just do my own ride in between. Anyway, a few things to think about. What do you think? I'm going to be honest with you, right now I am completely lost. And I love it. I've got no idea where I am. But that's the beauty of this. Which is a bit like a church service, because sometimes they're going through stuff and I get lost in that as well. But it doesn't matter. Because nobody's watching. It's just me, the peace and the space. And once I finish talking, I will just quietly reflect on what's happening the rest of this weekend, what I need to do for myself, and my role with everyone else. Well, thanks for joining me. Take care, ride safe, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon. Bye for now.